Good evening. This is the December 13th, 2021 meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. My name is Jason Molina. I am the chairperson of the committee, and I will begin with an opening line regarding some COVID preliminaries to get through. An advisory from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health has been issued for all non-vaccinated and fully vaccinated people to wear a mask in public indoor settings in areas of substantial high transmission. Shrewsbury has been categorized as a high level of community transmission. Therefore, we will require that all employees and visitors in all municipal buildings wear a face mask. Exceptions from the mask mandate requirements include those with a medical or other eligible condition. In addition, we ask all those attending the meeting to practice social distancing, leaving space between yourself and other non-related parties also attending the meeting. The committee members here tonight will also be masked and participating social distancing through their seating arrangements. When speaking, we ask that your face mask remains on and appreciate your cooperation. All right, this meeting will be called into order, seeing that we have a quorum. But for the record, we will go through to announce who is here. So this is Jason Molina, and we have Rajesh in the house.
Yes.
Thank you. Deborah? Yes. Present. Melanie?
Here.
Thank you. Martha?
Here.
Gail?
Here.
Steve?
Here.
Jim? We heard that Jim is not in today. And Kathy?
Here.
Okay. Also with us tonight are members of the Planning and Economic Development Department, Bernie Cahill and Rowan Callister. Thank you all. All right, this meeting is called to order. First meeting agenda item is to review and approve the minutes from November 1st, 2021. Are there any questions or comments before making a motion relative to that meeting minutes? Okay, not hearing any. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. All those in favor of the minutes as they are written in the Google Drive, please signify your approval by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next meeting item, agenda item is discussing and voting on the upcoming meeting schedule. This is the schedule for the balance of this, of our term year going through June 30th. A little carryover there as well, but the dates were provided earlier for your review in anticipation of looking at those dates. So relative to those dates, where you see a couple of dates offered in a particular month, it is my hope that we could meet on the first of those two date series, unless there's a conflict when you put it within your schedule. So I will open up the floor for any comments relative to those dates to see if there's any conflicts of those dates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only date I have on the multiple days, or actually there's two of them, for the, I'm sorry, my apologies. For the multiple dates, there's only one conflict, is April 4.
Okay, Steve, no. Okay, April 4th. Any other conflicts?
I have a conflict on January 3rd.
January 3rd?
3rd, yes.
Okay, we do, the first meeting in January would be the 10th, is that?
Okay,
Yeah.
or
Mr. Chair,
Sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say I did extend the dates slightly to include both the first and second Monday of each month. I did that midweek last week.
Oh, okay.
My apologies for
So I
any
have a
confusion.
different-
I just
yeah.
wanted to open up a few more dates in case
Oh, okay,
they weren't
okay.
available.
All right. So let's,
The packet in front of you will have the updated meeting, so I do apologize for any confusion that caused.
because I'm looking at January 10th as the only January
Right.
date, okay. All right,
The updated one.
okay.
So, Mr.
Got it.
Chairman, given the new information, I am still okay with only having a conflict on April 4.
Got it. Oh, there we go, okay.
And I would say, yeah, the packet has the most up-to-date information. I think that is the only change I made, but please refer to those when
All good,
possible.
thank you. So, Deborah, no on January 3rd, right?
okay.
Okay. And Steve, no on April 4th. Okay, any other conflicts?
I would also offer a conflict on April 4th.
Okay. That's Martha, okay. Any other conflicts to note? Okay, not hearing any. It sounds like we will go with the second dates where there's no conflicts. All right, presuming there's all good with the second date where there's a conflict. So basically we're saying is January 10th. We have then February 7th, March 7th, April 11th, May 2nd, June 6th, and July 11th. Okay. All right. We'll take a vote on the schedule as I just read off. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. And second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. All those in favor of the schedule, again, we're just reading off the dates for clarity. January 10th, 2022, February 7th, March 7th, April 11th, May 2nd, June 6th, and July 11th. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, pass, unanimous. Okay, next item for discussion tonight is to review and vote on the Community Preservation Budget Memo, which Mr. Cahill had provided. That should also be in the drive. Are there any questions or comments relative to that memo?
Mr. Chairman, might I just speak to it for a second?
Yes, please.
To go over it with everyone. I hope everyone has had a chance to review it. So this is something we do by departments as well. This is a little unique for this committee because of the way it's set up and what this committee's has a budget. The planning board does not have a budget as such. Not for this, not for these projects. So what this budget memo does is it pretty much outlines to town management and anyone else just exactly what the intention is for the Community Preservation Committee in the next, in the next fiscal year. We don't have exact numbers on this because that's not the intent of the memo. The memo is to spell out exactly what the steps are going to be taken and what's happening next year, next fiscal year for this committee. Actually, I think it's calendar year, this one. I take that back. This is by calendar year, the memo. So it explains, for example, how we're going to be working on the CPC plan, having the forum, the public forum, so on and so forth, all the way through sending out the first applications or setting them up. So there really isn't too much there. We do have just the final budget number that's been anticipated by the town accountant at the very end, but it's otherwise it's kind of pretty straightforward again about spelling out what's happening in the next year. So this goes hand in hand with what the next agenda item is just talking about the draft budget. So this is kind of supplementary to that. Any questions before I relinquish the microphone back to the chairman?
May I make one comment on that?
Sure.
If we have to file a town report in the, the bulletin, the booklet that goes out for the town,
Yes.
I'm assuming we're going to write a town report for our committee. This is an excellent rough draft of this. With very little tweaking, this would be it.
Yes. Except for this talks mostly about the first section, yes.
Yeah, the first section is.
Second section is the
we could
future,
just
but
take it
yes.
right off the page.
Yes,
it would be
yeah,
great.
that's probably what we're gonna do.
Okay.
But we'll be asked to do that next month.
Okay.
Budget's first, then we do the town reports. Yep.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, does anybody else have any questions or comments relative to the memo? I'll say, thank you for rushing to get this through. I know that there was some upstream things you needed to get that done between this and the budget as well, for the next item. And again, I agree with Melanie relative to the content of it. I think it speaks very well to what we've been and where we're going. And I don't have an issue with that as well, so.
So the motion would be for the town planning or the planning department to issue the memo to the town manager. That would be the motion.
Okay.
Whoever wants to
Anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the memo as described and made available to you, being sent over to town manager? Thank you.
Got it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Carries unanimous. Okay, next item is the budget. Review and take any comments relative to the draft budget that was also provided by Mr. Cahill.
Thank you. So for this next one, we would also need a motion to submit the draft budget to the town accountant and the town manager's office for their review. What would happen is they would review it. If they have any comments or concerns, they would send that back to us, the planning department, but then also the committee with those questions or concerns. I'm hoping this year it's pretty straightforward. This is obviously the very first year, so we don't have any like carryover budgets. We don't have any grants or whatever you want to call it, projects, excuse me, at the moment to recommend or what have you. So I can just quickly go through this. We obviously don't have any beginning cash balance from this fiscal year. This is projected, right? This is what we're going to start July 1st with this committee. So in working with the town accountant's office, Mary Thompson, she came up, she has the estimates of $789,000 estimated by June 30th of 2022 we're going into. So that would be the budget for 2023, fiscal year 2023, which starts on July 1st and runs through June 30th of 2023. And then, of course, so if you look at that, then you see the estimated revenue. So we obviously didn't have anything from last fiscal year, which is the fiscal year we're living in now. So this is what we're proposing. So the first one is the local surcharge, which I just discussed. And then as I think the next one is administrative fund of 5%. We're actually going to talk to Stuart, who did our training with us a couple months ago. If we can, how specific we have to be, if we put that as at 5% for fiscal year 2023, if we need to be super specific and go back to town meeting for like a special town meeting to say exactly what we're going to use that administrative cost for. But whatever it is, I think the committee should get into the habit of, or at least my recommendation would be getting in the habit of proposing that 5% for administrative costs. That also includes like professional fees, so like consultant fees, anything else. If we want to advertise for something, Rowan and I could go out and purchase postcards or what have you. So that's kind of what it covers. So we took that one's 5%, and then you'll see 10% for the other three as required by state statute. For open space and recreation gets 10%, 78,900, same for historic preservation, community housing. And then the remainder, 65% is 512,850,000, and that's the undesignated section. So we saw that pie chart, if you recall, breaking it down. So this is proposed for fiscal year 2023.
Any questions or comments regarding the budget?
One quick clarification for my own education purpose. So this is 2023. So what happens from now to end of 2022? So do we still have funds to utilize, or is
There's no, the board the committee does not have funds.
Mhm.
So this will go to town meeting in May. So this will be written up in writing as a warrant article on
Right.
town meeting.
Mhm.
And then at town meeting members will vote on the budget.
Mhm.
And then as of July 1st, this would be your budget. But we don't have applications coming in right now. We have to do, and we're about to talk about all this.
Mhm.
We have to do the public forum, right? This committee has to do the public forum, put together the community preservation plan, put together applications, criteria for the applications, start accepting applications. But even if we started accepting applications, say, next month, the committee doesn't have the money until July 1st, either way. And then we'd still have to, that's just a recommendation, right?
Right.
The next step would still have to go to a town meeting, special or annual,
Mhm.
to get those approved. So the next 6 months, we don't have any money at all. And then what you'll see changing next year when we write, so 12 months from, well, maybe today,
Mhm.
what you'll see on this is beginning cash balance will be, well,
Right.
perhaps $789,000.
Mhm.
And then the next fiscal year will be for July 1st, 2023. So this is it. This is it for the next 18 months.
Okay.
And then it starts to come in, and then things get busy, and that's the fun part. We start seeing applications come in, and that's when we start to do all the expenditures. But this is, so right now, the ledger is zero all the
Mhm.
way for the next 6 months, and then this is what we proposed.
One little more
Sure.
clarification. So the funds any unused funds will be rolled over to the next fiscal year, right?
Yes.
Is that?
Yep.
So we're not losing anything?
No, Nope, yeah. Good question.
Thank you. And I want to add that, definitely right now, as you see, the state match is 0, and that's because we haven't we haven't earned anything for this year yet.
Yeah.
But next year, next November, we will be earning for collections of the prior year. So that was where I'm, really looking forward to seeing that money come in as well, because that really is going to really enrich why we decided to go, to seek CPA, right, as to get some part of that state match as well, help with these local projects. All right, well, any other questions relative to budget? Yeah?
I have a question.
Yes.
We are collecting it, it's just not allocated to us, right? Because I have a note from our October meeting that there was 169,000 that's been collected for CPA.
Right, so that's been updated,
Okay.
end of this second quarter's, end of December.
Okay,
So then it's as estimated by the town accountant, what the next 6 months after that will be, the next third and fourth quarter. And then, of course, there might be an adjustment. Of course, this is, projected actuals will come in, and it might be a few dollars different or more.
okay. So we're collecting it, it's just not here because we haven't voted on the budget. Is that
And
right?
it hasn't all been collected.
Six-
The end of the fourth quarter, the final dollar will be collected through surcharges.
Okay.
So June 30th, 2022 is the end of the fourth fiscal year quarter. So then, but we do this with everything, right? So because the town meeting, maybe town meeting should be July 1st, but, and maybe in a sane world it would be if we could match everything up in people's vacation days. But annual town meeting's in May, right? So every budget gets voted on at annual town meeting. And then there are adjustments, of course, made through actuals. And sometimes that's why we have a special town meeting in the fall, just to kind of fix the numbers as they got changed and realized in July. So,
Thank
but yeah, right now, it's not there. We have to make sure town meeting votes to
Okay.
allocate it for us. And it's actually gonna make more sense, I think, next year when there are projects, because then you'll be recommending to town meeting to approve projects, right, to spend, and there'll be a number on that, and it starts to make a little more sense. This first year getting up and running is a little, it's, I don't know, confusing. It was confusing for me. It took me a while to get my head around it.
Right, and I may just add, so next year, you'll have anticipated funds will still show up so this is anticipated to be at 789. As Bernie mentioned, the first quarters that had that 116,000, those were the actuals. End of Q2, end of Q4, well, Q2 for the town is the end of this year. You'll have more actuals, so that number could either increase or decrease based on any building that's going on relative to property tax. So next year, we'll have actuals of what we had, and then what we're projecting to get over the next year as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. And certainly, I think one thing I want to mention is that it isn't like no monies can be doled out for 18 months. It really is about that. This is the budgeting going into next year, and the soonest you could possibly have any project proposal will be if there was a special town meeting in the fall. So that's something that we want to keep in mind as we look ahead about our timelines and getting ready for the potential of any project requests, that we're ready to hear those requests and be able to move forward. All right, any other questions about the budget memo? The budget itself? And now, this won't be the last time we see this, right? This is a draft written all over.
No, it'll
so.
come back. It'll come back to you.
So we don't need to vote on this, do we?
I'm asking for a vote to issue the draft budget to the town manager and town accountant's office.
Okay. All right, so then we need a motion.
So moved.
So moved.
Yeah, there we go.
Second. Okay. All those in favor of forwarding this budget as presented to the town manager's office? All those who are in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Next item on our agenda is a review of the timeline. All right, so the timeline, let's get to that. All right, so that was the PowerPoint slide that looked like this one. Okay. And I wanted to just kind of lay the groundwork. What are we trying to accomplish here? What is here? If you look on the left-hand side in this timeline, you have a couple areas that we're focusing on. One is the community preservation plan itself, and that is basically at the heart of what we need to do in our first year as a committee. If we don't go down to the next line item, that row is going to be about, well, once we have a plan about how we're going to review those, now we also need, how are we going to, have people solicit, request projects, how they're going to submit them, what's the criteria they should weigh against, and how are we going to use the plan that we've developed to weigh in on those applications, and having that transparency to the community as well about how they request projects. The next line on the second page, turning it over, will just be like a catch-all of anything else that we need to layer in, including further edits to the community preservation plan, such as taking input from a public forum that we're required to have as well on a yearly basis. Okay. The next line after that, you see specifically the application and its materials, so that has its own track. And then lastly is the budget, which obviously tonight we had a little small taste of it, but it gets underway further in beginning of February. So if we go back up to the top first page, looking at the community investment plan, the first row, you can see that there's December, where we are right now, and tonight's focus is looking at the table of contents, the framework for the community preservation plan. Thankfully, 186 other communities have already done this, and so we're not reinventing the wheel here, but we are looking to just take a little bit of best of the breed as we would like to see it, and tailor that document. And this document will be a living document as the committee moves on for year to year to year to year. And it basically talks to the needs of the community and how we as a committee will weigh those requests, so that it's the transparency to the community about how we look at those projects and how we move recommendations forward to town meeting. Going further, into the months, tonight with the table of contents, that framework will go into, I like to see that we break that down into subgroups where everyone takes a little bit of the pie, or of the plan itself, and come back in January with already drafted sections that they've worked on, or as subgroups. I'll get into what that plan, the table of contents of framework, and how I'm recommending to break it up in our next topic, but I just wanted to again talk about that timeline. So January, we're getting back together about the plan and how folks have already drafted those sections. February, we further refine that content. Maybe other folks come in to say, oh, I've read your section, I think we can enrich it by doing the following. March, going into more, basically marching towards more detail about this plan with the end goal of finalization by the end of our term. Now, I would like for us holistically to work towards getting our community preservation plan finalized by June 30th. And the reason why it's June 30th is because some of us have rotating through your own committees that you're appointed from. And I want to make sure that the work that we start gets to be finished with the same participants that are here. I think it only makes sense to try to wrap up the ideas and get it all into place, so that in July 1st, and maybe this is the same group that's going to be coming on to July 1st, but hey, you never know. But we want to make sure that we've done the community a service by providing the plan completion and having a methodology in place for community members to raise project requests. Okay. I won't distill the further details of this timeline, but is there any other questions or comments about the timeline as it currently stated? Okay. So again, this is to help us just put our heads around what are we doing for the next several months, and we'll go on to the next agenda item, which is diving into that community preservation plan itself. Okay. So let's move on to that. So item number 7, review and discuss the draft community preservation plan, aka table of contents, or if you will, the framework of our plan. In preparing for tonight's meeting, early on, Rowan has sent out a listing of sample table of contents from other from a few of the other communities in Massachusetts that have adopted CPA. Seeing that listing of the table of contents of there, I thought it would help us jumpstart what we should have in our own plan by I put together some, a framework from those other committees and put them into our own to help in the discussion for tonight. Is there any general questions before we dive into the agenda, or if you haven't had a chance to review it, please speak up, and we can certainly do a little refresher about what is the plan, what is the community preservation plan, and why do we need it, et cetera. Does anybody need any background before we get into the detail?
I would like a little bit of background. I did not have a lot of time to drill into all of the other communities that were in the Google Drive.
Sure, okay.
Give me a little bit of background, that'd be great.
No problem. Okay, so the community preservation plan is a required document that every CPA community needs to have, and basically, it's our way of communicating to the community about, we have this money, how are we as a committee gonna review their projects? And how from what measure are we basing this on? So it's basically a needs assessment that we're gonna do, and we're gonna distill down to some goals that we like to see, that we can clearly articulate to the community, so that when they're presenting project proposals before our committee, that we have a basis to say, hey, your project seems to line up with a particular aspect of what we're hoping to do in Shrewsbury. And our objective is, we are hearing out the community's needs through a multiple channel perspective. So there are already existing documents that Shrewsbury has already authored, like the master plan, like the open space and recreation survey, housing production plans. And then there's also what's going to be coming up in the next few weeks, which is a community survey, or strategic survey that's going to be happening, that we're going to get more feedback on from that process. Plus our own community preservation committee public hearing that we're targeting somewhere in the March-April timeframe to hear more of the community's feedback. So lots of avenues to hear feedback from people. A lot of information that we're going to be collecting. Now the question is, how do we bring that down to like some succinct, these are particular goals that we're going to weigh project proposals. So, and I'm not picking any favoritism, but let's say if someone came through and said, I really would like to see a dog park happen in Shrewsbury, and it happened to be in our goals as pet-friendly entertainment, recreation, great for the community, outframe, blah blah blah. If that happened to be there, then that's something that lines up to it. If it's somewhere outside of the bounds, it takes less precedence because it's not really lining with the needs of the community. So it just helps to get that picture about how are we going to do it, not just willy-nilly recommendations to go forward. The process of us creating the plan also helps us get to know what does the community need. And what I'm really excited about this plan as well is that we also have direct representation from those committees that make up the CPA, right? So like, Conservation Commission, Historic Commission, Planning Board, Parks and Cemetery Commission, Housing Authority. So there's a lot of representation to cover the direct stakeholders in this plan. Does anybody else want to add anything relative to the plan and why we need it?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I would just, to take the pressure off of everyone, is we're actually required, this committee is required every year to hold a public forum and to update this plan. So there's no right or wrong way to do it. The state doesn't prescribe a specific way to write this plan. It's up to communities. And if in a year from now, this committee finds that something's not working, or there's just they decide a section's not relevant anymore, this committee's empowered to change it. They just have to hold the public forum, excuse me. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. There's no really wrong way to do it. And we can, of course, refine it. It's a living document. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yep, for sure. And definitely there, like I said earlier, there's a lot of examples out there, from very simple plans to more elaborate plans, and in their look and feel and their scope and content of what they had on there.
May I just comment on that a
yeah,
little bit?
sure.
Do you think that there is any benefit to be derived by really stressing things that are more significant than the small plans that you mentioned? Should that be a goal in the back of our minds, that we really want to stress something that really is going to be significant as opposed to a minor change? I mean, are we wasting money on minor things if we do that first?
Can you frame the part about minor as in the
Well, like
scope of a
small-
document or
small
minor projects?
A small project, like, maybe a little corner with a bench somewhere, or I don't even know what it would be, but something really small, or tree planting project in a little area or something. Those would be very minor projects, but they would be very doable, and we could probably do them quickly. But on the other hand, they're kind of insignificant in the overall scheme of things, and I just wondered if you had a overall sense of what the philosophy will be about big significant plans as opposed to little tiny plans.
Right, no, thank you for bringing that up. Certainly, what's also been weighing on my mind as we're getting ready for tonight's meeting, I'm thinking, goals in this plan, I don't think they really have to say that it needs to be the $1 million project. It doesn't have to be the shining star of Shrewsbury and then all the world will be amazed about what this project that happens. And if it is anything short of that, it's not going to happen, But really it's about aspiration about where the community wants to go, right? So if that is additional park space can come in all sizes from 0.4 acres to 100 acres, right? And et cetera. So there really is big aspirations. And certainly, I would personally like to see if there was a way that we can come up, and this is not really so much in the plan directly, but I think in the application process, that we keep in mind that project proposals come in all sizes, right? From the scouting organization where the volunteer is looking for $1,000 for wood, right, to build some kind of signage for a trail versus $100,000 request to do XYZ, right? And so there's certainly a weighting, what's there, and to Melanie, to your point about not every project proposal needs to go through this really long process, but certainly it's a little further down the line. But I think thank you for, the point with the goals is that it's, we're not looking to say, make this project. We're saying this is the aspiration about what the community has requested. Does that?
Thank you, yes,
Help you?
I feel much more comfortable about it. As you say, projects come in all sizes. We'll just keep that in mind.
All right, any other questions, comments before we step through the framework?
Mr. Chairman, one quick question. So do we have, we saw this TOCs in the drive. Will we have access to the existing plans from the other towns? What's their criteria is, how they handled it on all those things, all those aspects?
Yes, so in the drive right now is the table of contents from about, I think, 10 communities that were there. And really it was, they were cherry-picked from what the coalition saw as some really good examples on it. But literally, there's 186 of these. So trying to bring it down from that scope to what the coalition raised. And then I took a stab at saying, let's if we can align to one, and this way we can get through tonight's meeting. I'm hoping that we can get to the framework and say, this is what we'd like to see to start with. We can tweak here on, live now to craft that framework and assign sections to folks to say, can you take, two, let's say pair 1 or 2 people to pair up for individual sections to draft it up leading into the following meeting, the January meeting. If we step through this and say, hey, I really like town XYZ, they had a great framework, we should have this section, right, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
We'll discuss it here and add that if that's the will of the committee to do that.
One more clarification. So do we have that, like a back-end data for all these TOCs that we have here? So like actual plans from these towns?
So, yeah.
Mr. Chair, we do have a folder in the
Okay.
Google Drive. It's labeled samples, CPC plans, and those are all the full plans of the TOCs that I've pulled out into that
Oh, wonderful.
kind of centralized document, but all the plans are also there. I can certainly assemble application material and further criteria as we get farther into that, but for now, we just have the plans.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Good? Okay.
thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Okay. All right. So let's dive into then the framework, Shrewsbury Community Preservation Plan, draft table of contents.
Should I try to pull it up?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. Okay. I'm also, if you don't mind me adding, I'm editing this live in the Google Drive. If you do want to follow along on your devices, you could pull it up as well.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So what I'll do is, I'll walk through the document first, get through, this way we can get a sense of what I'm proposing, and then we'll see if there's any general comments there about adding or removing pieces, or what is intended for that section. And then we'll circle back to it if there's no other edits further, then we'll go into assignments of individual sections for the next meeting's homework. Okay, first I thought we would open up with, and I saw this from other communities where they had a letter to their town saying, it's sort of a welcoming document. Again, the plan doesn't have to have this part of it, but I thought as a community, we'd like to, tee it up so that we want people to read this, right? And it's not just a document that sits on the shelf, like the ones behind me, and doesn't get the light of day, but rather something that can be communicated to the community. Okay, so that letter, thinking about focusing on the opportunities the CPA brings, and iterating that this is a community-focused effort. This is separate from the municipal budget. This is really community-led, and we encourage the participation of the community to bring those projects forward. And just to, if you don't already know, this committee does not propose projects. We are the reviewing body of those project proposals, and we're helping to communicate out, say, hey, community, this is what we've heard all the people want to see. But again, we do not initiate project requests. So that's the kind of summary in that letter to the community. Okay. All right. Moving on down, and please stop me if you have a question about that particular section. Okay. Then going into section 2, which is a community overview, and I was thinking that we would have a little bit of background about Shrewsbury, so that there's a context with the framework of historic preservation, our open history, open space, where we've come, farming community, growth in our community, land has been built upon, and now we're left with our open space being challenged, and how do you balance that, and at the same time also community members having the need to be able to afford to remain in Shrewsbury. So kind of leading into that conversation about CPA and the categories, right? That our community is looking for recreation in general, sensitive to open space, needs to be able to afford to live in Shrewsbury, and also retain historic artifacts and for future to have that. So that was both history and today, talking about the past and looking forward and to why CPA is needed in our community. Then section 3 is what is Community Preservation Act, and given that background about the legislation, very briefly, there was enacted in 2000, a number of communities have adopted it, a little bit of the write-up, and perhaps lifting some of it from the budget memo, right? Because it's really succinct about dates, timelines, and what's happened there, right? Some background there. Next, section 4, how CPA funds may be used. Again, this is explaining to a community about where does the money go, right? Explaining, that pie chart, right? That says that 10% for each of these 3 categories, 5% to administrative funds, and then there's the balance, which really is going to flex based on the project proposals that come forward, and and that's how that gets teed up. You know, and then also the project, determining project eligibility under that, how CPA can be used. And that, there's a chart that the coalition has put together. There's actually a couple of them. There's one is a simplified view, which is very simplistically saying, you know, the action verbs of supporting, renovating, rehabilitation, you know, creation, right? And then along the 4 categories in CPA. And then there's another version behind that we'll probably maybe put as an appendix, which is the legalese version of it, because it has a lot of asterisks in there and saying if it's a historic preservation, then it has to be an artifact that's listed in the historic. So there's fine detail which gets teed up in later sections of this plan. And so, well, I'll cover that when we step through this a little further. Okay, so 4.2 is just the simplistic, just getting you started, right, as a reader. Okay. Then section 5, membership and role of the CPC. This is a very simple point about it. It was just teeing up who are we, right? Not the current members, but just what is the committee and what is its role in this. You know, what are our key responsibilities? You know, looking also, you know, in our responsibility is this plan itself, as we're talking about. Our you know, responsibilities are also reviewing and recommending CPA projects to a town meeting, and then keeping records and preparing annual budget. And then, you know, 5.2 is a guiding principle. So what's going to be our guiding principles about looking at these projects? So are we looking at it? Not every project needs to be a large project. You know. There's good to be had in all sizes, you know, something catchy. But, you know, this is the gist about how are we going to go and do our thing. Okay. And again, certainly stop me if if you would like to pause on any particular section here. Number 6, the CPC planning process. So looking at how the ways that we're going to be using known and new inputs to develop this plan. So 6.1 is leveraging our existing documents. I already mentioned some of these earlier. And then 6.2 is the public hearing. There will be another cycle back into our input. Actually, I should add in here as well that we're also required to solicit feedback from town departments and committees that are relative to CPA, so that we'll be adding that as well. I think it's 6.3 departments and committees. Okay. And obviously, we'll start off with, you know, the fact that obviously some of you are already members of your respective committees and, you know, as a representative. Now, we'll get into the logistics about how, you know, do you speak on behalf of CPC while you're at your respective meeting, or does somebody else attend and you're, you know, so I think we can get to that later in terms of that how that flow works. But in either case, your individual committees are represented here, and so you are bringing that value to the table. And just to widen the net a little more as well, we'll go back to those committees and say, hey, you know, the other members of that committee, what do you know, is there anything else that you're hearing that we haven't already captured in this? So.
I think where I was part of the master plan committee and planning, obviously, it played a role in that. We would give advance notice for the public meetings that were, you know, soliciting ideas and so forth. So I know that we used as an agenda item in the planning board, you know, opportunity to give an update as to maybe a project that was going on or where we were in the status of the master plan at that time. And then also for, you know, just soliciting more advertising for upcoming public events. So I think that's an opportunity for all the different boards to do that as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Do you foresee any committees that we should solicit opinions from other than the ones that are represented here?
Yes, I think looking wider at any other committee or board that has any tangible connection to this, so like Trails Committee.
Always trails, yeah.
Like Trails Committee has, you know, pretty much right in line with that.
Okay. I wasn't necessarily thinking of that, but yeah, of course.
Do you have some other group in mind?
I just don't know. I don't know, highway, water department. The water department has some potential impact for protecting water sources, which is one of our open space goals, right? I don't know if really, they might be useful to talk to them. I just throw that out for what it's worth.
No, thank you.
I don't know if
Appreciate
they
that.
want to talk to us.
I think one of the beautiful ways that, CPA could be used is a multi-pronged approach, right? Like, while you're protecting, our water sources, but you're also providing open space, right? At the same time, if that's an opportunity,
Yeah.
or leveraging, a historic building and, renovating it to be affordable housing units, right? Doing a 2-for-1 special.
Well, there's also things like, if the water department has property that is no longer used for water production, and I believe there are some places like that in Shrewsbury, that might be able to be transferred to conservation or something and get more use out of it.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, just things like that.
Yeah, no, certainly, so, and that's why I think in the way CPA language is out there, saying the plan, you need to go back to these departments, because they're also facing the community, right? They've also been hearing these things, and bringing those ideas back to to this committee, to be able to, help influence our approval process about what the needs of the community are. Okay, so 6.3 added? Oh, commented,
Oh,
yep, thank you, appreciate it, thank you, Rowan. Okay, after that, there's, section 7, which is the CPA application process. You'll notice that I've referenced Watertown a lot in this, framework. That was one of the favorite ones, in my personal opinion, about, how I liked the way they created their community preservation plan. So I'm thinking, the way the Watertown did their section on application process, what they basically said here was, here's a very half a page summary about what it looks like, but deferred the detail for that to its own document, right? Saying, here's the application process, here's the form, here's the timeline. So again, this is just a very high level view about what does it look like, right?
So you are in favor of the preliminary one-page application and then going on to the full, so they could rule out people that are way out of line as to not matching the goals of CPC, right?
Yes, when we get to the application process part later on in the year, I think that will be, that's certainly, in my personal opinion, will be one of the things that I'd like to see, is a way to kind of, do quick checks of saying, is this even feasible?
Okay.
Even in here, I mean, this is an opportunity here to reiterate that, because in an earlier section, we would have talked about the allowable uses, a simplified chart, saying your project proposal needs to fit in with one of those categories. But not getting too detailed, man. And I think Watertown had a nice approach to that write-up there. Any other questions, comments about that? Okay. From here, from section 8, and then for the balance of it, it's a rinse and repeat for each of the 4 categories. So let's just say open space is the category 8, right? And then you'll have a section for 8 the subsection for existing conditions and resources. So that is summarizing what open space do we have now? Is there anything that we want to bring to the table here? It's sort of like summaries. And again, we're not looking to create new content here. Leverage the documents that already exist that summarize this section, right? So if it's open space, I'm thinking you're going to use summaries from the open space and recreation plan, right? Because people already thought about how to summarize what's going on in the community. The next subsection for open space would be the open space needs. So that is a narration or bullets about what has been known. So let's say master plan, OSRP, housing production plan, et cetera, will comment saying these are the things from the community, or other feedback that we have from those boards, and et cetera. So this is the bulleted points there. We're going to circle back to the next section, which is goals. I'm sorry, just getting my straight in my head here. The needs are very there's a lot of needs that get collected over time, right? But with leading into goals, which is 8.3, is the succinct version of all those needs. So if there's 20 different things out there, if they collectively, let's say open space, if they collectively come down to preserving and protecting our land that's directly affecting our water supply, just making it up, okay? That sounds like a goal based on the fact that you have 20 other points above it, sources, particular documents, community public forums, departments have called this out, right? So that's an opportunity to boil it down to, here's a goal. and that was what 8.3 would be, is a succinct goal. It's max 3 goals, right? Thereabouts. Does that make sense? I'm just gonna stop on that point there. Okay. All right. Because the needs listing, that's 8.2, and the same for the other categories, let's say, the recreation, historic preservation, affordable housing, that list gets large. I was thinking that we would take all those needs that people are hearing from each of the groups and just start collecting them separately, and that gets fed to, sent to Rowan, to be able to just track that and just put it on the list. So there's another spreadsheet, which is already in your drive, that don't put it directly, it has to go through Rowan, it's done properly, but, that should have that collected. And so the folks that are working in this section, let's say open space, can refer to that section, if you don't already have this information, right, to help develop the goals. Reason why we want to kind of separate that, breaking it out, is because we think we all hear needs in our community, and we have many different channels. So maybe, Kathy, you might be hearing, while you're in housing authority, you may be hearing directly about, recreation needs, right? Or, Gail, you may be hearing historic preservation, but you hear, hey, can we boost our affordable housing using historic preservation, right? So, there's those opportunities are basically everyone's hearing, these things, and want to be able to capture it somewhere so that we can, bring it down to individual goals.
And I created the document so that you all have viewing ability. You won't be able to edit, just due to open meeting law. We want to make sure we're following that. So you can have a running list on a Word document. You can just send it to me every once in a while, and I'll just add them onto the shared document so you can all see what you've been adding. And I would encourage, if you find a goal that you really like that's already up there, you can still make a note, and I can make a kind of this is seconded by so-and-so or something like that to show that there's specific interest in that one.
When you say goal, how is this distinguished from project?
So goals are things that communities saying we need,
Okay.
and the projects of the
Is
community
way to-
coming to saying, I have a proposal on how to meet that goal.
Okay. So if I suggested that we needed some, scenic remediation on a particular street, that would be a goal, the distinct project that would say, we want to plant 20 trees along the street, that would be the project?
So I would bring it back to more broadly, saying more tree-lined streets, right?
Okay.
But it has to fit within the CPA. So
Yeah, okay.
yeah. So that's just
That's
more
only-
broad,
that's only for
more
just
park. I might say more park
curious.
spaces, right?
Okay.
Recreation, right?
Okay.
Spaces, right? And so the needs of the community could say, on this particular date, the survey I'm making it up, survey from January 15th, they went out to community, showed that 300 respondents said they would like to see additional parks in our community, right? So that is a need that gets sent to Rowan if you capture that, if you want to capture that and bring it to Rowan. Just cite your source, right? I got this from the survey on January 15th, and obviously she'll capture that you submitted it, right? Doesn't need to be elaborate, just kind of help connect the dots, right? If it's a document, page 23, it says it, right? So that kind of thing. Then, the goal is not going to say specifically add parks to community, but rather something a little more broader, right? So that's bringing all those needs down to a more generic goal about how we're going to review projects with that need. and then the projects themselves will be, hey, I have I'm so-and-so, I'm already gone through the Parks and Recreation Department, and we would like to jointly talk about a project proposal to use $200,000 of community preservation funds to do the following, blah, 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 right? And so we see how that lines up with the goals, and it makes it easier, if they understand it and we know what we're looking for, it makes everyone's life easier. Okay, so again, needs are many, goals are succinct. Needs go to Rowan, and we'll move on. So then 8.4 is CPA eligibility for open space, as an example. So this is an expanded definition. If you're familiar with the coalition's website, there's the high level one pager chart, and then there's lots of detail behind it for each of the sections. So let's just pick on historic preservation, for example. Historic preservation would say, lots of detail, like if it's an artifact, it needs to be artifact or building, it needs to be listed on the community's local list of historic places or artifacts. And so if it's a privately held building, it needs to conform in certain ways in order to be eligible for CPA monies. If it's a open space project, if it's a land purchase, it needs to have a
restriction?
a restriction, yes, thank you. A restriction added to it. So that's the final level of detail that I think the folks are aligned, especially if you come for a committee that's aligned to this particular item, you already speak that language and already understand, what they're looking for in that space. Okay. Again, we're not reinventing the wheel here. This is just picking things off the coalition's website to be able to put in a single source for a community member to read this if they have interest in open space or recreation, et cetera. Okay, and then lastly, 8.5 is, I like the way Watertown did this because it really helps kind of drive some ideas out there. So let's say, for instance, as a committee, we sit here, let's say full years from now, right? We hear all these ideas. Oh, great idea, but, they say all these needs, but we don't see any traction with projects. Well, maybe if we can just put a little something down here that says, we hear a lot of people talk about dog parks, right? Or we hear a lot of people talking about pocket parks or whatever, whatever thing the thing is, right? It's a way to kind of put a little suggestion out there. Of course, it has to line up with, a goals up here. And again, we don't initiate the project, but it's just a way to make it more succinct and trying to grease the wheel to get other people thinking about some ideas in our community that, could get some traction, given what we hear. Okay. All right. And again, those 5 subsections are repeated for each of the CPA categories: open space, recreation, historic preservation, and affordable housing.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question about 8.5. This says that it will be populated after we hear feedback from boards, committees, and the public. Does this mean that there would be formalized opportunities for the public to weigh in, public forums, for example?
Yes, so there is, we're required to at least annually have a public forum, a public hearing, I should say, and using the plan as our gateway to help, solicit more feedback from the community. So I think, earlier when, Ernie was talking about, say postcards to solicit, to communicate out that there's the public forum. And I think we're going to be communicating to the community about, here's an opportunity to weigh in on what is the need, what are the needs of community, right? And come in and give their piece. So, there are a lot of ways they can communicate about the needs of the community through, the documents I referenced earlier, through the survey that is, that could be coming soon, I think January, right? So, there's a lot of ways, but we as a committee are required to have this at least one public forum that we initiate. Does
Thank you.
that answer your question?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. All right, any other questions, comments? So framework, I know if you happen to look at other frameworks, table of contents from other communities, do you have any interest in revising the proposed? You want to add, subtract? And if you hadn't had a chance to look deeply into it yet, that's okay as well. But certainly, this is not the last opportunity to do that, right? You know, this is our baby, right? And we're going to be, helping it along throughout this year. It's just helpful to get traction starting tonight because there are a lot of sections to this. So certainly, as we move on to the January, February timeframe, I think we want to solidify for by that time. This is the scope of the meat of this, and then by that time we're just tweaking sections, right? But not holistic rewrites. So,
I think it's a terrific framework. I think much of the information we're looking for has already been created, like you said, from some of the existing committees. There's some terrific documents that already exist here in Shrewsbury. I think the ones that are really important for us to be thoughtful about right now are the letter and the way we present what we can do, because the letter's really our executive summary. We want somebody who perhaps doesn't sit on the committees we do and find joy in reading the documents that we do, to look at it and feel like I can have a say in this. This is my town, and maybe nobody thought of this great idea that I went to bed last night with. We want it to be informative, but not too long, enough to get them to maybe go to the section that they're really interested about, where they can get more. You mentioned an appendix that would have the more detailed information, and I think that's important for folks who really want to dive into it, as well as the links to relevant sources that we've used. The application part, too, we should be thoughtful about to give them just enough information. I write a number of grants for a living, and you see a grant application and it's many, many pages, and it's intimidating, and especially the federal ones. But if there's an overview that tells you these are the goals of this funding opportunity, and you can kind of right off the bat think, well, maybe I do have a shot, you'll keep reading. But if it's about capital projects and you need operating money, well, then you just keep moving. But those are parts that I want to make certain that we're very thoughtful about.
all right, thank you. Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. Yeah, it is the executive summary, right? That letter, and it really is speaking to the community, right? But this is your the community. This is your opportunity. All right. So, not hearing any other comments about the framework as is. What I'd like to do at this point is take. Since we can't all, it's not efficient for all of us to come together, and we're not going to speak to every single word on this document and fleshing it out. I was thinking that we would break up into do a little homework assignments, and take up to 2 people per section to just work that section to that pair or one person. That's fine. And I know that we're all volunteers, so I know that everyone has their other activities going on. So that's fine. I just want to make sure that we get traction in each of one of these sections as best as we can. And certainly, I would be asking. I think it's helpful that if you're coming from a particular represented committee, that you're kind of aligned with that section that's also aligned to your activity, if you can. Okay. In this first go around. And then once we get past this January, right, then we'll have an opportunity to switch. If somebody is like, all right, I've kind of exhausted that section, and if you want to switch, that's also an opportunity as well. Okay. So do we have any takers on the letter to Shrewsbury, that first opening line?
Well, I'm happy to give that a shot, as you know, but maybe I've already given my shot, and I have a draft, and if you want to look at it and just toss that out and then let people tear it apart or throw it out altogether. I have no attachment to it in particular. I just wanted to do something.
Of course. Well, I
quiet
think,
afternoon.
you've certainly started. I think, should continue in that
All right.
piece. And is anybody else would like to join Melanie in crafting up that letter to to Shrewsbury.
It's very short. I mean, it's like, you know, I think it's 2 paragraphs.
Yeah, I can help you with that.
Okay, do you want to work on that?
Okay.
Now, does this rule us out from working on other things as well?
No. I just, you take on as much as you want. Okay. It's your time, right?
All right. Well, I just like to say I'd like to work on open space as well.
The only thing though is we have to just make sure that as we're hearing about assignments, that not creating any public, you know, any open meeting law violations. So that's going to make sure, absolutely.
Okay, all right,
You work on your part and you stay with your section.
okay.
Ultimately, to get to January's meeting, 1 week before the next meeting, if you can have all your drafts just uploaded through Rowan to the drive, so that we're all seeing it, not commenting on it, but just seeing it in the drive, so that we can come with comments to the January meeting. Okay. So,
Mr.
Melanie-
Chairman, I just want to add too, at any point, you can send something to me and Rowan to review. So if you have drafts, that doesn't violate any open meeting laws to send it to us, staff. And we're happy to give you feedback, or if you have a question about something, we're happy to help. So don't hesitate with that. It's just the whole cross-communication offline thing is frowned upon. So once you're kind of in your lane, at least until the next meeting, just stay in that lane and work on what you got. But you can totally run it by us. That's not a problem.
your own
So we can
experience.
communicate with you, but not with each other.
So, right.
Okay,
Unless you're in the working group together.
right.
Like 2 people work on the letter together, perfectly fine. We're actually a big committee, so you're a big committee, and I'm not really on it. You're a big committee, so it's actually like up to 4, I believe, is not a quorum. Although we're gonna try to keep it, I think Jason's idea to keep it to 2, 3 at the most, just to keep it wieldy and not unwieldy. Probably more productive. But yeah, absolutely run stuff by us. Give us a call. We're always around.
All right, so Melanie and Deborah working on the letter to Shrewsbury. Okay, community overview. We'll take that together, history and today. Anybody have interest in that section?
I'll take a piece of that.
All right, Steve, thank you. Anybody else would like to join Steve on that?
I can.
Josh? Okay. Thank you. All right, so that's history and today. Okay, and again, think of the perspective of certainly, if you haven't had a chance to look at other plans, just see a couple samples. I really love the Watertown. I'm going to say it again. I think you kind of look at that and say, the reason why I like them is because other ones are very small plans, like not a lot of detail, but I think they do a lot of, it feels more like a community document. The others sort of feel like it's just a departmental document sitting on a network drive, right? So that's why I bring it up. And also, it looks inviting. So it has to feel inviting as well and speak inviting. So that's why I bring it up. But again, the other ones are available out there, you know, that Rowan has put out there. And if you really want to see other communities, you just go to their to that community's website, and they have to post their plans as well, right?
Mhm.
Right, so any particular plant, Northborough is an example, Northborough, Grafton, right, they're CPA communities. So if you want to look at their plans, that's also available too on their website. Okay. All right, what is the Community Preservation Act, number 3? Yeah.
I'll take that if you don't mind.
Nope, don't mind.
And I don't mind working on number 4 as well, if that kind of goes together.
Anybody else want to join Gail for 3 and 4?
I can help out with that.
Okay.
One thing I would suggest trying to include the part about funding allocation is to stress that this is a trust fund and that it's not subject to annual appropriations by the legislature, because there's something a little bit more hopeful about the fact that it's not subject to politics, that the money is there and our community should be thinking about what's possible. That's my 2 cents.
All right, so that's Gail and Martha for sections 3 and 4. Okay. All right, number 5, membership and role of CPC. And that includes responsibilities, the CP plan, review and recommend projects, record keeping, and annual budget. Not very exciting, right? I'll take it. And if anybody want to join me on that? It's okay if nobody wants to.
How many of these can we sign up for?
Well, we're almost at the home stretch here, so you can certainly sign up for that too as well.
If you feel that you'd like me to work on that with you, I will be happy to do that.
Okay, then we'll do it.
I mean, that's a fairly cut and dried segment, isn't it?
Dry, yes.
Yeah. I mean, you know, cut and paste.
Keyword dry. But it has to be said. Okay, thank you. Number 6, the CPC Planning Process. So that is, that includes a new added section of 6.3, which is town departments and communities. I'd like to take that. If anybody else would like to join me on that, or Melanie, if you want to join me on that, I think it kind of blends in with 5.
I'm sure.
Does anybody else? I don't want to. If somebody really want to do it, then
I'm happy to weigh in on that too.
I think the other sections here that's large sections.
Yeah.
So all right, we'll see how the other ones go and then come back. Okay. Okay. Oh, it's actually application process. Yes. Any takers on that one?
I can take it. I'm
Okay.
completely biased by what I'd like to see in the applications that fall on my desk every day,
Yeah.
so.
I think that
nice.
a better person.
I'm
You're already-
excited to be
you're
on the
already,
other side of it.
You're very already kind of in that realm, right? Of just here, saying what people's projects requests are, and how to communicate a summary on that. Okay. Anybody else want to join Deborah on looking at CPA application process?
I'll do that as well.
Okay. Steve. Okay. All right, number 8, okay, open space. So here, we got some meaty ones.
I think the Conservation Commission should be involved.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Okay. Anybody like to work with Martha on this?
I would like to do that.
We can do 3 if we want.
Yeah.
No, I can, no, I can take the next one, so it's okay. We have enough.
Optional third person for open space?
You know, it occurs to me, we don't have,
No, if we have a third person opening, yeah, I'll jump in.
Okay.
we might want to ask Jim.
So since he's not here tonight, I don't think we have an opportunity to kind of sign him on that formally. But I think we, could see offline about, kind of I can catch him up to speed as a chair to say where we've been, and see if he has any availability to work any other particular items.
Yeah, I think he could work independently, certainly on the 4 areas, and just look through those documents. I think that'd be helpful, and then I don't think he needs to be assigned through the committee for that.
Okay.
And then come back in January with his ideas.
Thank you. All right, so open space was Martha, Melanie, and Rajesh. Okay. All right, recreation.
I can take that.
Okay, anybody else? Recreation?
I might be able to convince Jim to work on that as well.
Oh. Right. Since that should be right up his alley. Does anybody have any, is anybody not okay with me suggesting to Jim if he has availability to work on this section? I want to just pre-approve it.
Fine with me.
Since he's not here, he's lucky we didn't assign him to everything.
And it's due by Friday.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll pre-approve it. If he's not able to participate in that, I'll work with that with you, okay?
Sure.
All right, me optional, Jim suggested. Okay, cool, thank you. Historic preservation. Gail, thank you.
And actually, I think out of the 4 areas, the historic preservation is probably the most, I don't want to say simplest, but less complicated of the others. So, I mean, if somebody wants to join in, fine, but I'm comfortable just trudging myself, but you're welcome to join in. It's pretty basic, I think, based on, I mean, I've already done some preliminary stuff, so I think it'll fall into place pretty easily.
Yeah, I think certainly, I think depending on how, the background and how you came, and any folks came to this, to this committee will certainly give you a leg up on hearing background. However, I think it is important that we have many people that have that mindset, because when we hear a project proposal, it's going to be for all of us to weigh in on, and the more people that get educated on that section, the better we'll be as a committee to be able to, weigh on those requests. So I would like to see if somebody else can work
Sure.
with Gail. I mean, certainly, Gail, you've done a lot of work on it.
No, that's
and,
fine. I don't want to, I just didn't want to pressure anybody to have to join another group.
Yeah, no, of course.
That's
But I
fine.
think it'd be best for us to have
Sure.
a second person who's now familiar with historical preservation to say, oh, I didn't realize that was a scope of it. Yeah,
I'll join Gail.
Okay.
all right.
Yeah, that nicely aligns with the history and
Yes.
look forward thing, yeah.
All right, and lastly, affordable housing.
I'll take housing.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else?
I'd love to learn more.
Okay.
All right. Awesome.
Great.
Okay, so that covers our assignments for the sections. I think we just, for the framework, we'll just add appendix, which would be the catch-all as we see something that should be scoped in as a reference, but, I think we all know what that means, right? So, okay, any other broad questions, comments? Is there anybody not know what we're looking to do? All right, so we're good. Okay, so the objective here is, for the next meeting, which we agree to is January 10th, right? Okay, is to have, for that meeting, we'll be reviewing each of your, our assignments, drafts that we've created. We sent it to Rowan, and we've already have thought about that. Our drafts are due at least up to the week prior, so by January 3rd.
Yep.
Right? Just have that already posted. Certainly, if you're done with your section earlier, even better. Just get into get through Rowan so that we can review and comment on that. I'm obviously very aware that we're by the holidays timing, but we also have 4 weeks out to the next meeting, so kind of a balance there. This won't be the only opportunity to make this sections, right? It's just we need to get some traction on this section and getting on there, and we can leverage a lot of what's already been made available. So kind of balance it out there. All right, awesome. So, any other comments, questions?
I have a question, Jason. What will be the review process of these documents that we're putting together? When we meet next time, are we going to present each section and go through it, or
Okay, so how would that look like on the January meeting?
on the
Is
January
that,
meeting, yeah?
I anticipate that I will go through, I would say, section, let's say historic preservation, section 10. You and Deborah would have already had the, draft already posted through Rowan onto the drive, and I would say, are there any questions or comments from the committee relative to what's been drafted for that section? If there's no questions, then your copy that's what goes forward.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, if I might, Gail, great question. I'd like to make a suggestion.
Sure.
Once those drafts have been submitted to other committee members to see, I don't know how many if you're all familiar with track changes on Word, or if you just want to do it by hand, and send those comments to Rowan, and she can make a master document with all the comments. So that way we're not deliberating online,
Yeah,
violating the open meeting law. You're going to hear this a lot. And what we can do is show it on the screen, present it. So if, let's say someone has an idea for historical preservation
Right.
and they want to add a bullet point. So Rowan could she'll combine all the track changes or all the suggestions, and then you can see it. We can even write who it's from. So we'll say, Steve said, don't forget about the Sumner House or something.
Right.
Right, like,
Okay.
boom, we can put it there, and we'll go through it, and if anyone has objections or wants to modify it, we can do it that way. But that way, it's probably the most efficient way to do it. If we're doing it in real time, live updates, it's gonna slow us way down. So if you can, that's why I think if we can get stuff to Rowan January 3rd, we just said,
Yes.
we can make like a master table of contents with everyone's comments from reviews. Does that make sense?
So if somebody on the committee had an idea or thought, should they send that to Rowan, and then
Yep.
Rowan will get it to whoever the committee?
Oh, I think
Person
Rowan
is-
would just update the document, and you could go into the Google Drive and you can see
Okay.
the comments that may
Okay.
be there. Is that?
Or the night of, right, we'll
Right.
go through it the night of, and then it'll be in a public setting, everyone will see the comment and see that it's,
Yeah.
you know, if that also becomes too unwieldy, which is the word of the night, we'll just adjust, right?
Okay.
This is, trying to be patient with myself as well, you know, we're just starting it, this is the first time for Shrewsbury, so I just keep saying to myself, deep breaths. We're gonna get this in a month or two, we'll have it down pat,
Yep.
so I'm not worried about it, we'll get it, so, but yeah, I think that's probably the most efficient way, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, I agree, yep. Try to get that. So the key thing is that we're not nitpicking every, like, oh, should we add this word?
Yeah.
But, you know, I've already kind of done the homework and pre-looked at it, and then, you know, just kind of reacting to, you know, the suggestions and
Yeah,
picking
absolutely.
one or two, so. Okay. All good? All right, all good. All right, so that wraps up item number 7. And next steps have really been kind of weaved into this topic here, looking at the plan. Again, our focus is the plan for now until we get into the detail about the application process down the line. All right, does anybody have any questions or comments before we conclude tonight?
Mr. President, the one quick thing. So once the normalization of the process will be happening after our next meeting, right? So like the criteria for these individual application selection criteria, are we going to do a normalization of the process between the like housing section and then open historic section, or because maybe they come up with a different criteria? So are we intended to align the criteria much more closer so it won't confuse and it won't be too broad for the community to understand? So if I'm applying in this particular subsection project, I need to follow this criteria. So are we going to do a normalization of requirements or the needs, specifications of those projects coming from the community?
If I'm hearing you correctly, I think your question is relative to how does someone from the community know what criteria their
Right.
project should line up with?
So like the
And
eligibility of like, let's say, recreation 9.4, 10.4, and 11.4. Are we gonna sort of normalize the requirement process across these focused areas for the application process?
So I believe that Section 7, CP application process, which is Deborah and Steve are taking the first crack at it, that will tee up the broad understanding about your project proposal needs to fit in through a general framework that's here, right? Within those verbs and the categories. If that's good, you've gone past the first gate. Then the next gate is your section. So if you're asking for monies for affordable housing project, you need to go to affordable housing section and now look at that criteria and say, all right, here's a lower level detail. Is my project proposal lining up with that, with the spirit of what's here? Now, recall that this is going to be just some guiding principles for us to review the project. We're not weighting an individual project here through this document. We'll just say there's a need for affordable housing in our community. We're below the standardized subsidized housing inventory. proponent is in front of us looking to add 100 units, I'm just making this up, right?
Right.
And so, we would say, okay, well, we're looking at this project proposal, it's section 11, we know there's a need, right? We know there's a need, our goal says we need to have more. Is this line up with affordable housing? I'm gonna go back to my chart and say, affordable housing, what are we doing here? We're supporting, or we're creating new affordable housing. And in terms of like the nitpicky part about like, can we support this project? I think we'll get into that. That dialogue is really about that project proposals review and looking at, is there anything that we have to watch from a legal perspective? Like the law of the CPA. And that's where the details of the normalization about so like there are nuances for each of these sections. They're unique to that section. So like, historic preservation, where it would say that a building has to be within the local historical, it has to be listed in the local register for historic places and artifacts. That's a requirement. It's only unique to the historic preservation. It won't apply to affordable houses. So that's why we can't really normalize across the board, but we can start off everybody the same chart, and say, okay, if you get past this chart, now go to that section about what you're looking for,
Okay.
and then let's see if that goes there. Now, our goal is not to scare people away, as well, right? Right. It's just say, hey, because the project proposals come in all sizes, right? From the scout who wants a few $1,000s to a business entity that comes in here saying we want to make a proposal to take $1 million of CPA money to do the following. So we want to just be cognizant of that and just make sure we're not blocking. We want to spend the money
Thank you.
wisely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wonder too, after we have public forums in March or April, how much, we'll probably fine tune some of this as well. I mean, we're basing needs on assessments that have already been done, but hopefully we'll get a lot of public participation in the spring, and we have till this says July till we're done with this, so we can revise it too, and hopefully it will continue to reflect what the community wants.
Exactly. So we'll get started and we'll get the input as we go forward. All right. Any other closing questions, comments? All right, all set. I think we'll take a motion if anybody is interested in leaving.
Motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
Thank you. There's been a motion to adjourn and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
All those opposed? Hearing none. Meeting adjourned.